Verhael Oxall. I am Skeggy Vetter, and welcome to the Norse Code. It is October. Tomorrow is Halloween. Samhain, if you will. And I thought, what better than to have a episode on the history of Samhain for Samhain. Now, some of you may be asking, Samhain, isn't that a Celtic festival? And it kinda is. Primarily originally it was Druidic, and then was adopted by the Celts and later the Christians and became the Halloween we know today. I do a lot with Druidry. It's something I've been interested in and I've been learning over the last year. So I thought this is a good topic. I've celebrated Samhain for years now. So I thought it would be good to talk about Samhain. And then next year we can do the Norse Fall Festival, Vetternetr. So what is Samhain? Samhain, spelled Samhain, was originally a Druidic practice. It dates back long before the Celts came to Ireland, some 2,500 years ago. And how long the Druids were celebrating it, we have no idea. I ran into some problems in researching Samhain. I wanted to give I knew a story of what Samhain was, but I wanted to provide to you the best story that I could, the most accurate. And the issue with that is, as I'm reading through source after source after source, it's inconsistent. The problem is we don't really know a whole lot about its history. We know bits and pieces, and there's theories on how they fit together, but not everybody agrees. So I'm going to do the best I can to kind of give a general overview of what I've learned over the last few days of reading about Samhain. And then we'll talk about how it ties into modern Halloween. As I said, it begins with the Druids. With the Druids, it was a sacred celebration. It just see, this is where we're missing a lot of information, and I'm trying not to talk about what the Celts did, instead focus on the Druids, but we just don't know. We know it was held in the fall. It was their fall festival. We know that a lot of the practices remain the same throughout all the different versions of Samhain. The big thing with Samhain is that it is a fire festival, hence our fire here tonight. It's one of the 4 big fire festivals. The fire festivals would be halfway in between each of the equinoxes and solstices. So you have Beltane in the spring. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation of this. Lugenhaus in the summer, Samhain in the fall, and Imbolc in the winter. I'll probably do an episode on Imbolc because that ties into both Groundhog's Day and Valentine's Day in an interesting way. Anyway, back to the fire festival. What they would do, it was a 3-day festival. You'd have a huge bonfire, and there'd be sacrifices of both plants and animals, all of which would get burnt on this big fire. Everybody would put out their home fires and take home a torch from this bonfire and use this sacred fire to light their hearth for the year, for the winter. In fact, it's because they burnt the bones of their sacrifices that we now call it bonfire. It was originally bonefire, which became bonfire, which is an interesting bit of information that I picked up just this morning. So in comes the Celts. Now the Celtic people were all over northern Europe. You have them in Germany, you have them in Denmark, and France, Spain, maybe not so much Spain, but England and Scotland and Ireland. Most people usually think of the Celts as Irish or Scottish, but they're actually all over the place. And it was really only the Irish Celts that celebrated Samhain. There were versions of it in Wales and Scotland. This wasn't quite the same, and their traditions varied wildly, but the Samhain we know today was primarily Irish. So this is, again, a place where there is some back and forth and disagreements as to what was Celtish, what was Druidic, what was Christian. And as I'm speaking, I'm thinking that it might be best to, jump to the Christianization of it, and then talk about modern Halloween and how that traces its way back to the Celts. It might be a more straightforward method of discussing this. And I do apologize for the noise. I'm near a highway. I'm in my backyard here tonight. So the Christians, in an attempt to convert pagans to Christianity, stole pretty much all of their holidays. Yule became Christmas, Symbolic became Valentine's Day, Beltane became May Day, and then of course Samhain became All Saints Day, followed by All Souls Day. Now originally, the All Saints Day was moved to the spring. They were trying to completely disassemble the pagan religions. And it just didn't work out. So another pope came in and made it November 1st, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day, November 2nd. So you spend a day praying for the saints, these holy ones, and then you spend a day praying for your ancestors, your loved ones. Because Samhain has always been a day of remembering your ancestors. It's been a day of death and rebirth. And so it became All Hallows Eve, the hallowed, holy. So the Saints' Day, the holy day. The evening before All Saints' Day, the eve. All Hallows Eve, Halloween. And it was celebrated right up until today. And funnily enough, as time has progressed, we've adopted more and more of the ancient rituals, ancient cultures, ancient, celebratory activities to be part of our own. So at this point, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and talk about each of the items or celebratory activities within Halloween and bring them backwards to Samhain and All Souls Day. So let's begin with talking about jack-o'-lanterns. Carving a pumpkin, putting a light in it, leaving it on your doorstep. We've all done it. But it wasn't always pumpkins. Pumpkins actually didn't start until they came to America, because pumpkins are not native to Europe. So instead they would use turnips. Now there's a couple different stories as to why they started to use turnips. or to carve them in general and make lanterns out of them. One of them was to kind of protect yourself. It's the day that the veil is thinnest and that spirits and fae easily roam amongst us. And to kind of protect yourself, you would carve a scary face into a turnip and make a lantern out of it to frighten those spirits away. There is another story which I'm not as familiar with. It's Celtic mythology, in which Swindling Jack, I think it was Swindling Jack or something along those lines, was a person who would cause trouble, and he would create a lantern out of a turnip. And by having your own turnip lantern, he would think you were some version of himself and leave you alone. I've only ever heard that story once. I've heard the other one numerous times, so maybe it's more so that first story. But like I said, this has been a hodgepodge of different opinions as to how Samhain came to be. Speaking of the veil being at its thinnest, that's also where trick-or-treating comes from, with the spirits roaming around, and the fae roaming around. They can potentially cause trouble. So if they come to your door, you give them a treat, and they leave you alone. That's what I've always understood to be the origins of trick-or-treating. However, the Druids lay claim to that. The Celtics lay claim to that. The Christians lay claim to inventing trick-or-treating. They would call it souling. And on All Hallows Day, All Saints Day, they would, especially children, would go from house to house looking for soul cakes, which are little shortbread type cookies. Even Canada lays claim to inventing trick-or-treating back in the 1920s to stop kids from causing mischief. They encouraged kids to go from door to door and ask for a treat, and if they got something, they would leave the house alone. If they didn't, then they were free to cause mischief, which sounds an awful lot like the Celtic version of the origin of trick-or-treating. So which one really is the origin? I don't know. So I talked about fae. I do want to mention that something that I learned long ago is that on Samhain, the fae migrate from their summer homes to their winter homes, and then migrate back on Beltane. So I always leave a cake and a offering of alcohol out on my porch for the fae. By leaving them that offering, they will leave me alone and not cause trouble as they pass through my property. So it's a simple gesture, but one I recommend doing just in case. Oh, I'm burning through wood a little bit quicker than I anticipated. Yeah, so what have we covered? We've covered jack-o'-lanterns, we've covered trick-or-treating, costumes. That age-old tradition of dressing in costume, one of my favorite aspects of the holiday. Ever since I was a kid, I've enjoyed dressing up, being my favorite superhero or figure from a video game, movie. But where did that start? So the story that I had always been told is that it started with the Celts, and that because the spirits and the fae were moving around, you should stay home. But if you needed to go out, you should dress as a spirit, so that they think you're one of them and will leave you alone. The whole holiday, at least the portions of it that we use for Halloween, seem to be protection. Funnily enough, even pumpkin spice, we give women a hard time for being basic because they have pumpkin spice everything. But what are the ingredients of pumpkin spice? cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, all spices that have been used for protection. So as the veil thins, what else can you do but protect yourself? Now, me personally, I like to go on a ghost hunt. It makes it a little bit easier for spirits to come through and for you to gather good evidence. But, that's me. I mentioned that Samhain is a time of death and rebirth. Many people, especially modern pagans, believe that this is a time to, the term I've heard is burn and buff, to burn away bad parts of yourself and to buff up the good parts. My fiance and I actually went to a ritual last night for that exact purpose, to identify aspects of yourself that you don't like, that are holding you back, and to burn those away, and then the attributes of yourself that help you move forward and to grow. You try to build those up, make those stronger. Death and rebirth. Samhain, Halloween, it's always been a time to honor your ancestors, to honor the dead. A ritual that I like to always perform is to do something for my ancestors, to honor the dead. Without them, we wouldn't be here. There's I've known about this practice for a long time, but I've never heard the term dumb supper until recently. And what that is when you sit down to have dinner, you set a place for a spirit, essentially, and you're inviting an ancestor to come and dine with you. I don't do it every year, but I do it most years. Every once in a while, I'll save Samhain as a fasting day, even though traditionally it's a day of feasting. But if you're going to be performing rituals and such, sometimes it's good to fast. So how, in a modern pagan, how can you celebrate Samhain? Well, really, you can do it by celebrating Halloween. Go trick-or-treating if you feel up to it. If not, participate in it. Decorate your house, carve jack-o'-lanterns to protect yourself, hand out candy to the children. More importantly, honor the dead. Go to a cemetery, clean a grave, leave offerings. The dead can come visit you on Samhain. The veil is at its thinnest throughout the year. Speak with them, communicate with them. Do so in a way that you're protected, obviously, but work with them. And the veil being thinnest could also mean that the gods can more easily come through. So do something for the gods. Leave an offering. Pray to them. Invoke them. Something that we forget in our modern day and age is that the dead, our ancestors, are sacred. Without them, we wouldn't be here. We owe everything to them. We need to honor them because they come back. They come back to help us, two of my spirit guides are ancestors of mine. One I knew in life, and one I never knew. Died millennia before I was born. I should do an episode on spirit guides at some point. But they're always there for you, whether you see them, whether you feel them or not. And by honoring them and honoring your name and being a good person, it's all ways to honor the dead. But on Samhain in particular, there's many different rituals and offerings and whatnot you can find online. Tomorrow, or today as you're watching it, because I'll be posting this on Samhain, I am planning on doing a ritual for the forgotten dead. So this is not my ancestors or people I've known. These are people who have been forgotten by society, who don't have heirs to look back and remember them. So that'll be my tomorrow night, tonight, depending on when you're watching this, after the trick-or-treaters. Samhain is a time of rebirth. It's the death of the summer, but it gets reborn as the dark times. And then by dark times, I don't mean bad. I mean, it's darker. The sun goes down earlier and comes up later. We're working towards winter at this point. Wiccans, they believe, if you go by their two deity system, that on Samhain, the horned god, who might be Cernunnos, dies. And he is reborn on Yule. Death and rebirth, whether it's the Druids, the Druids, the Celts, or even medieval Christians, this day, Halloween, All Hallows Eve, Samhain, is a very sacred and important day. I know this talk has been a little disjointed, and unfortunately that just seems to be how the information is. It's disjointed. The Celts didn't leave very good written documentation. The Druids, none at all. So a lot of it is figured out by archaeologists through digging and finding things and figuring it out. And there's different interpretations. A lot of what we do have written was written by Christians, and they put their own spin on things, which is a issue with the Norse sources. But that doesn't change the heart and soul of what the day is. How you view it. Whether you're looking at this purely for a historical aspect, which is my rendition of the history is a little flawed, I'm sure. But if you're looking just for the history of it, it's an important day. If you're looking for the spiritual significance of it, it's a very important day. Arguably the most important of the year. I know Christians hold Yule to be, or Christmas to be the most important, which is our Yule. And definitely we'll be doing an episode on Yule. And how Santa is actually Odin. But for pagans, neo-pagans especially, Samhain is so important for your own growth as a human. Samhain can be life-changing. Death and rebirth The ritual that we went to last night kind of struck a chord with me. I keep getting kind of lost in thought as, cutting out the more difficult and troublesome parts of myself. I'll tell you this, this past year, the past 2 or 3 years really, I've been in the best, it's been mentally the best of my life. But this year, every once in a while, those more negative thoughts started creeping in, and they definitely held me back. And I'm working on burning that aspect out of me, to kill that part of me. I know why it's there. It's there to protect me. It's in primitive days, it was that part of your brain that walked into a situation and saw nothing but the bad that would save your life. We don't need that nowadays. And really nowadays, it's more harmful than good, because it's not life and death situation that we find ourselves in that the dark thoughts come into. But so that aspect of myself needs to be burnt away so that I can thrive. I said it last night at the ritual. I said it when I visited my grandfather, his grave this morning, and I will say it to you now. In a year's time, I will come back to this, and my life will be completely different, and all for the better. This will be my year. This is the year in which my dreams begin to come true. And I want you to tell yourself that as well. Work towards it. Find what doesn't serve you in your life and get rid of it. Even if that's an aspect of your personality, your thought process, get rid of it. It's not helping you. Remove that. Death and rebirth. That part of you should die so that you may be reborn a new person, a stronger person, a person who will attain their dreams. Well, my camera just died, so I guess it's time to end this. Thank you for listening to me ramble. Very much appreciate it. Samhain's a very important day for me, and I have had a lot on my mind, so it's hard to keep my thoughts coherent. I understand that. But I still think it's a valuable message to get across. This is an auspicious day. So please, do yourself a favor and celebrate Samhain. You will not regret it. You will not regret it. And while you're at it, doing yourself favors, like the Norse Code on YouTube, follow us on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at SkeggyVenter. Hit that like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me tonight. Good night.